Every homesteader faces the same headache when the sun starts dipping below the horizon. You watch your hard-earned crops get chewed down by slugs, massive snails devour your fresh leaves, and worst of all, ticks lurk in the tall grass waiting to latch onto your livestock or your family. The conventional desk farmer approach is always the same. You buy expensive synthetic poisons, spray down the soil, and shatter your natural ecosystem. Real producers know the land offers a far more profitable answer. Imagine having a relentless worker patrolling your pastures from dawn to dusk, eradicating crawling threats, and instead of handing you a bill, they convert that very pest problem into premium-grade meat and nutritious eggs. Today we're putting two titans of biological pest control head-to-head. On one side, the tireless wetland dredger, the duck. On the other, the fierce watchdog of the dry plains, the guinea fowl. Both are extraordinary powerhouses for daily pasture management, but only one will take the crown as the ultimate game-changer for your farm's bottom line. Let's begin. Smart farm management always comes down to slashing outside inputs. Every bag of commercial feed or gallon of chemical spray you drag onto the property eats away at your clean profit margin. When we implement foraging birds to sanitize our pastures, we flip the script in our favor. Pests immediately shift from being an economic drain to becoming the primary free protein source for our flocks. It's a flawless biological cycle. You identify a severe infestation, you deploy the right animals at the right time, and they transform those bugs into lean muscle mass and natural fertilizer through their nitrogen-rich manure. However, the biggest trap novice breeders fall into is throwing any random bird onto any piece of land and expecting overnight miracles. The real dirt farming world doesn't work that way. Every single species possesses a unique mechanical design and biological behavior, making them a perfect fit for a specific ecosystem. Choosing the wrong tool for your landscape will only bring daily frustration and bleed your finances dry. Let's first break down the undisputed specialist of the wetlands, the heavy-duty duck. Across many working farms, especially those dealing with heavy rainfall, low-lying flood zones, or extensive irrigation ditches, the primary threats have a slimy texture. Slugs, overgrown snails, and mosquito larvae thrive in this constant moisture. These pests act as dangerous vectors, transmitting severe internal parasites to your grazing herds. The dreaded liver fluke, for instance, uses the pasture snail as a stepping stone before it destroys the livers of your sheep and cattle. This is exactly where rugged, field-tested breeds like the Muscovy or the Indian Runner prove their immense economic value. These birds aren't just pond decorations. They're high-capacity biological dredgers. Their natural instinct drives them to filter dark mud and murky water from the early morning hours, constantly hunting down their daily protein ration among the wet sludge of puddles and livestock water troughs. The physical anatomy of the duck is specifically engineered to dominate this damp environment. If you look closely at their wide, spatulate bill, you'll notice tiny ridges along the inner edges that function as a high-efficiency biological strainer. As these birds push steadily through thick mud, they vacuum up massive volumes of water and wet soil, keeping only the valuable mollusks, tiny crustaceans, and larvae. A well-managed flock of ducks can fully clear a flooded pasture of disease-carrying snails in just a few days. They sever the parasite life cycle at its root, protecting your ruminants and ensuring optimal weight gain on the hoof. Furthermore, their foraging style is a heavy, continuous sweep across the surface. They process enormous amounts of wild feed without ever aggressively tearing into the dirt. This gentle surface action protects the fragile, shallow roots of your most valuable pasture grasses, allowing the duck to channel all that consumed energy straight into building heavy body mass. But this aquatic cleaning machine comes with strict operational limits in the field. The duck is totally dependent on fresh water, not just for hydration, but mechanically, to swallow its food properly and flush the mud out of its nasal passages. Their daily working range gets severely restricted if the main water source sits too far from the assigned grazing zone. We're talking about heavy-bodied animals with short, webbed feet. They're built to swim gracefully and walk at a measured, deliberate pace. They're absolutely not designed to trek for miles across arid, sun-baked fields under a punishing midday sun. If you force them to work a rocky hillside or a dry pasture, their productive efficiency crashes hard. They hit heat stress fast. They turn into easy targets for predators because they lack agility on solid ground. Therefore, the duck remains your ultimate agricultural operator if your property holds constant moisture, but it'll leave the high, dry ridges of your commercial farm completely exposed and vulnerable. On the total opposite end of this environmental spectrum, we find the undisputed queen of the dry pastures, the guinea fowl. Originating from the harsh, unforgiving African plains, these birds carry an unbreakable genetic code forged by centuries of surviving extreme drought and resource scarcity. While a standard barnyard chicken spends most of the day scratching a single patch of dirt, tearing up valuable roots and tender seedlings in your market garden, the guinea acts as a high-speed visual hunter. Their field behavior resembles a nomadic tribe moving in a tight, highly coordinated straight line. They sweep across massive expanses of rough terrain without leaving a single scratch mark on the soil canopy. Their short, thick beak operates like a pair of high-speed tweezers. They boast the visual acuity to snatch flying insects right out of the air or pluck bugs straight from the leaves without inflicting any damage to the host plant. The greatest productive value of the guinea fowl for any seasoned cattleman lies in their obsessive appetite for pasture arachnids. They treat ticks like absolute delicacies. For those of us running herds of beef cattle or flocks of breeding ewes, the tick is a dangerous blood disease vector that severely cuts daily milk production and brings weight gain on the scale to a dead halt. A cohesive, mature flock of guineas will hike at a fast clip for several miles in a single day, compulsively inspecting every single blade of tall grass across your acreage. These birds are pure powerhouses. They're highly capable of consuming thousands of ticks and beetles per individual throughout a grueling sunrise to sunset shift. Their physical endurance is unmatched. They don't require nearby water sources in every remote paddock, and they easily shrug off scorching ambient temperatures well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit that would leave a heavy duck panting and fully exhausted. The daily patrol of these African watchdogs goes far beyond merely wiping out tiny insects in the brush. When guineas reach full physical maturity, their sharp territorial instincts and intense flocking nature turn them into ruthless hunters against much larger, heavier, and far more dangerous ground threats. It's an extraordinary visual spectacle to watch a tightly knit squad of guinea fowl rapidly corner a massive field rat, or even more remarkably, stand their ground aggressively against an intruding venomous snake. They deploy instinctive group encirclement tactics, tactically surrounding the slithering threat. They unleash a constant, deafening alarm call to fully disorient the predator, launching fast, direct beak strikes to the skull until the threat is permanently removed from your breeding grounds. This natural, untiring capacity to hold the line against destructive grain-eating rodents and dangerous serpents delivers a direct, tangible, and priceless benefit to your farm's overall operational security. Continuing our breakdown of this dry plains guardian, it is absolutely critical to understand that the guinea fowl is not just another common barnyard bird that you can treat like a standard layer. We are talking about a highly sensitive biological radar, genetically hardwired over millennia to detect the slightest alteration in its productive environment. Their temperament is that of a perpetual watchdog, remaining on high alert, visually patrolling the very edges of your farm from the first rays of morning light until the evening dusk settles over the fields. On a climatic level, this African bird operates as a walking fortress. It effortlessly shrugs off the most severe droughts and scorching ambient temperatures, pushing well past 104 degrees Fahrenheit without ever showing a hint of thermal fatigue or respiratory distress. When it comes to managing their daily facilities, abandoning the idea of tight confinement is your first major step toward success. Guinea fowl demand continuous open acreage to establish their extensive daily patrol routes. They will instinctively seek out the thickest branches of the tallest trees on your property to roost for the night, staying smartly positioned out of reach from heavy ground predators. Forcing them into low-ceiling coops will only trigger severe behavioral stress, completely break their natural ranging patterns, and turn a prime agricultural asset into a frustrating liability that paces the fence line all day. Out on the working pasture, the rustic feeding capability of the guinea fowl is an absolute dream for any producer looking to fiercely slash their commercial feed bill and improve their bottom line. More than 80% of their daily intake comes from actively foraging wild seeds, locusts, grasshoppers, and their absolute favorite delicacy, ticks. They require merely a few ounces of supplemental grain thrown at sundown just to ensure they return to home base before dark. From a pure production standpoint, a properly acclimated hen will produce a highly valuable laying season, generating between 100 and 150 medium-sized eggs annually. These eggs are legendary for having extremely thick, shatter-resistant shells, along with rich, vibrant yolks packed with premium-grade fat and bioavailable protein. The main management challenge with these birds comes down to their incessant nomadic instinct. Because they travel continuously through dense brush, they demand strict external parasite protocols during their initial adaptation period if the existing arachnid load in your pasture is completely overwhelming. Yet, their actual value out in the field multiplies exponentially when the flock discovers a venomous snake hidden in the grass or corners a massive grain-stealing rat. They eliminate those specific threats with precise, coordinated beak strikes, actively shielding the biosecurity of your entire grazing herd and reducing your overall veterinary risks. At this level of strategic field analysis, the inevitable question every sensible farmer asks while staring at their ledger is obvious. If both biological machines perform extraordinary daily sanitation, which one truly deserves the top spot? If a budget forces you to pick just one species today, the guinea fowl undoubtedly stands as the absolute champion of full-spectrum pest management on solid ground. However, nature heavily punishes extreme, one-sided thinking in real-world farm management. Completely dismissing the duck based solely on the guinea's dryland victory would be a massive strategic failure. Guinea fowl deeply despise thick mud and will actively avoid entering deep puddles, flooded drainage ditches, or the sludgy banks of your livestock water troughs. It is exactly in those dark, soaking wet corners where the duck imposes its archetype as an amphibious dredger. Their methodical, peaceful temperament allows them to focus for hours, plunging their bills into murky waters, demonstrating perfect climatic resistance against torrential rains and freezing, damp chills that would completely paralyze other poultry species. Managing their facilities is the exact polar opposite of the guinea, and highly specific. They demand low-to-the-ground shelters, heavily shielded from freezing drafts, alongside unrestricted access to clean water bodies to keep their uropygial gland fully functioning, and their waterproofing feathers in prime condition for harsh weather. Down in the swampy environment, the rustic feeding capacity of the heavy duck transforms into a direct life insurance policy for the rest of your mammalian livestock. By endlessly filtering the mud, they devour thousands of snails and soft-bodied slugs, extracting a massive payload of aquatic protein that translates directly into outstanding production numbers. Depending on the specific breed you choose to deploy, these birds can easily push out over 280 jumbo eggs every single year. These massive eggs thoroughly surpass standard chicken yields in net weight and fat percentage, providing incredible value to your homestead. Alternatively, the birds themselves can yield impressive dark meat carcasses weighing 7 to 12 pounds, highly prized in culinary markets for their rich flavor. The biggest health threat out in the field that ducks actively resolve is severing the liver fluke's biological cycle. This is a severe parasite carried by pasture snails that heavily damages the internal organs of your sheep and cattle, destroying your profits. Nevertheless, to maintain this high-efficiency system, the breeder must constantly refresh any stagnant water troughs. Failing to provide clean water sources forces the birds to consume decaying organic matter accumulated at the bottom of the sludge, creating a severe risk of botulism that can wipe out your entire dredging crew overnight. The ultimate revelation for the elite homesteader lies in understanding that the heavy duck and the agile guinea fowl do not need to exist in competition. Instead, they represent the perfect operational pairing, forming an autonomous biosecurity system of maximum efficiency. This combined action archetype creates a total control canopy that leaves absolutely zero blind spots across your entire farm topography. While your ducks drag the low, shaded wetlands and clear out the mud, your flocks of guineas deploy in a tight formation out toward the sun-baked ridges and the wooded property lines. The cohabitation temperament between both species is practically flawless, as their natural instincts dictate they will never compete for the same living space, nor target the same type of wild forage. Managing this mixed species setup flows with astonishing natural ease, requiring very little extra infrastructure. As night falls over the homestead, the aquatic birds naturally group together in secure, low-profile ground pens lined with deep straw, fully protected from the wind. Meanwhile, the African watchdogs immediately take flight toward their elevated perches high in the timber or custom-raised roosts. This perfect vertical separation optimizes every square inch of available shelter space without generating an ounce of stress, pecking order disputes, or territorial friction between your specialized working flocks. The hard results of this biological synergy completely shatter any traditional paradigm regarding daily poultry maintenance costs. The combined rustic feeding approach drives your dependency on bagged commercial grain down to merely anecdotal figures. Both cleanup crews meet their heavy maintenance energy requirements by extracting pure fuel from different pest populations out in the pasture. Looking at the hard production data, the farm receives a continuous, highly profitable year-round flow of dense nutrients. You harvest heavy dark meat and jumbo duck eggs during the intense rainy months, perfectly alternated with seasonal clutches rich in trace minerals, and the priceless, uninterrupted watchdog service of the guineas throughout the burning dry season. The preventative sanitary alerts within this dual framework shift focus almost entirely towards sustaining a vigorous, disciplined pasture rotation program across your acreage. By properly moving your mobile electric netting on a strict schedule, the breeder guarantees that the heavy ducks do not totally exhaust the small water bodies and turn them into toxic mud pits. Simultaneously, it ensures that the ranging guineas do not overexploit the beneficial soil insect populations. This precise grazing management locks in a perpetual ecological balance that builds topsoil, accelerates plant growth, and keeps your livestock safe from crawling threats. When you walk your pastures and see the tall grass free of disease-carrying ticks and your water sources completely cleared of parasitic snails, you finally grasp the true power of biological pest control. You have successfully integrated living machines that not only sanitize the rough terrain, but actively converted the massive expense of pest eradication into a constant return of nutritious eggs and premium-grade meat. The Guinea fowl undeniably proved itself as the supreme leader of terrestrial vigilance across harsh, dry climates. Yet its strategic alliance with the tireless filtering labor of the duck down in the wetlands is what truly builds an impenetrable fortress around your entire livestock investment. Let me know down in the comments which of these options makes the most sense for your setup. If you got some value out of this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and give the video a thumbs up so we can keep bringing you practical farm advice. To your success, fellow breeder. Until next time.